All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to our first breakout session today. So, the title of our breakout session today is Strengthening Your Business Coming out of the Pandemic. And so we have a panel of experts here. There is a poll question up on the screen that we'd like for you to answer, just to give us an idea of what your level of optimism is um, for for where we stand right now. A couple of housekeeping notes here is we have the chat box at the bottom. So if you click on that chat button, you'll be able to ask questions throughout the presentation today. And what we'd like for this to be is that we have as many questions from the audience as we do from me. And so we'll be monitoring those questions. So please feel free to put any questions that you might have into the chat box. And so on our first poll here, it looks like the question is, when do you think businesses will be at full recovery? And looks like 30% of you said no impact or positive impact. And then looks like a couple of people said first half of 2021. And so what I'll do is I'll leave that poll up right now and start to introduce our panelists here. So the first panelist that we have is Trudy Nix. Trudy is the South Texas Commercial Banking Executive in the Global Commercial Banking Division of Bank of America. In this role, she is responsible for managing the group that calls on business entities, medical practices, nonprofits, and professional firms with annual sales of between $10 and $100 million. Each of her relationship managers manages a small portfolio of clients and brings to each client a team of professionals to meet credit, treasury, depository, international, and investment advisory needs. Trudy served in a wide range of leadership positions at Bank of America in her 40-plus years with the bank. Our second panelist is Nadim Mazar, and Nadim is the Chief Executive Officer of Custom Technology Solutions, which is a complete IT and asset management services company that was formed in 1999. He has over 15 years of experience in information technology as VP and CIO for American Parts Systems. And he currently provides financial benefits for customers across several industries, including automotive, pharmaceutical, hard goods, and office supplies, manufacturing, and distribution companies. He also provides his expertise to private equity, investment companies, and asset-based lenders for asset management, valuation assessments, and M&A transitions. Our third panelist is Jonathan Fisher, who is the chairman at Brand Extract. And Brand Extract helps brands outthink, outperform, outteam, and outlast their competitors. At Brand Extract, they focus not on just the brand's unique selling proposition, but rather on its customers' value drivers and how they are experienced and supported and expressed. And then last but not least, our fourth panelist is Chris Ferris, who is VP of Digital Strategy at Pierpont Communications, and he's also a lecturer in digital marketing in the Rice Business School. He's seasoned, passionate, and proven digital marketing strategy expert with 2 decades of experience in healthcare and online marketing and public relations. He's a lecturer in management at the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University, where he teaches a self-designed digital marketing course for MBA students. So we have quite a nice panel of experts here with us today. And so what I'd like to do then is just get into our questions and kind of get started. So as we think about coming out of the pandemic in a positive way, what is your most important piece of advice for the business owners, presidents, and CEOs in our audience? So Trudy, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I noticed in the first question, some of you said no impact whatsoever. So from a banker's perspective, we do have a lot of clients that are rolling along. Their biggest impact has been some of their staff having COVID and having to be out 14 days. But there are some, let's say in retail or the entertainment business, that revenue's gone to zero for the foreseeable future. So my advice, our lending has been turned on its head after 40 plus years. Yes, 40 plus years. We're totally changed in how we're working with clients and prospects about lending. Instead of the give me 3 years of financials, give me your interims. Let's just talk about what you're doing, what's your growth rate. Let's go for it. It's very much, nobody's lived through this before. This is new. We used to look at how many of our clients lived through the oil and gas roller coaster and how did they do it? Did they know how to do it? This is a whole different roller coaster. And so really the advice I give is think about cash burn. Think about if revenue stays at where it is right now, and if it's going great, that's great. Bankers will be flooding your doors. But if you're down 20%, 40%, 80%, how long can you last on your existing cash and cash equivalents? And my advice is over communicate with the bankers. We're all trying. We want to help and do loans, but we need a whole different type of information. So we have to roll up our sleeves really well on cash burn, which is it's been really interesting. Actually, it's been exciting for me to just have a change in how we work with our clients. That's just in a nutshell.
Which is a big change also for the business owners. So Nadine, while we're talking about the capital side of things, why don't you give us your impacts on what business owners, presidents, and CEOs should be thinking about during this time?
Rusty, I think first of all, we must all come to grips as to what really full recovery means. I think we've got to align ourselves into, if we are thinking about businesses will come back the way we were pre the pandemic, I think that is a little bit of a, that's really misaligned thinking in my opinion, because what I have seen, I've seen, the pandemic full cycle. I was involved in China, I'm involved in China. I saw it from the beginning in China and now in the United States. Businesses are going to change. So if in the middle market, if let's say you are $100 million company, and as Trudy said, that cash burn has happened and your revenue and you've shrunk or contracted to, let's say, a 40% decline run rate. So you're really a $60 million company. And I think one of the fundamental things one has to do from a business planning standpoint is to really say that, I'm incubating a company from 60 million on. As much as people are going to give us a buy in terms of financial results, in terms of margins and so on for the short term, banks and investment bankers are still looking at the fundamentals of the business. You still have to produce EBITDA. You still have to have cash flow. So really for leaders and operators of companies, we have to assess that who we are today, and we are no longer the same company that we were before. And businesses are going to change regardless of when the pandemic will be done. And I think we have learned as people conducting commerce that there are more efficient ways of basically doing things. So inefficiencies of the past are going to go away after the pandemic. So the new business environment will evolve, whether we like it or not. And we as business leaders have to change our business models and start looking at KPIs on a go forward basis. Because the same month comps from last year and all those stuff, I think that's really not the way to look anymore. I think we have to have a very positive attitude and really look at a growth strategy from here on, rather than look in the back mirror.
So what I'm hearing you say, Nadeem, is it's no longer business as usual. We're never going to go back to the way that things were. So Jonathan, let's let you jump in here. What do you think is your most important piece of advice for the audience?
Well, coming from the sales and marketing side of things, as someone who brands companies, I can tell you that we're sort of using the rule of three, which is basically refresh and triple your lead base as much as you can, because about 40% of your CRM database is probably no longer accurate thanks to layoffs or restructuring or their inability to purchase. So, we're suggesting companies really take a hard look at what they have in terms of prospecting, and to use some sources like Uplead or ZoomInfo. We love Uplead. It's a B2B marketing database. It's one of the few databases that guarantees the quality and the accuracy of their leads. And it's very, very affordable. So I guess rule number one is more, because for most companies, their win and margin rates will be lower and their sales cycles will likely be slower. So you really need to increase the prospecting base that you're going after and refresh the prospecting base. So I would say second thing is less is more in some case in terms of the actual sales and marketing offerings that you're putting out there. So a lot of our clients have had to reposition services, trim down sales messages, reduce noise in their pitch decks, think about it right now, if you're selling, buyers are probably purchasing on need or pain. You know, it's going to be critical that you strip out anything that's not essential in your pitch process right now. And you also want to lower any barriers to entry. So if you can, you know, reduce your terms or, you know, simplify your offerings to make them more affordable, whatever you can. So we've seen a lot of just sort of repositioning and adjustments in that case.
So what I'm hearing is less is more in terms of your focus and more is more in terms of your outreach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Chris? Chris, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on something that Nadine said, which is, and I'm going to do a slightly different spin on it, which is there are certain trends that were occurring in the business world, whether you're a B2B business or a BDC business, that were maybe slower, moving at a slower medium speed, but the coronavirus and COVID problems have accelerated a lot of those changes. And so if there were changes that you were going to make in your company that you were sort of putting off, especially involving digital, whether it's digital marketing or allowing people to interact with your company in a digital way, if you've been putting those off or you're going slow, I think now is the time to take this as an opportunity to accelerate that process, because there are things that are changing that aren't going to go back. And if you return to doing business the way you were doing it 6 months ago, it's not going to work. And of course, I'm going to say things like this because I'm hip deep in digital marketing and digital businesses, but I say that I say that honestly and sincerely, that the trend toward more digitization, whether it's digital marketing or online interaction with your customers or clients, is only going to accelerate. And if you haven't started to adapt to that now, you should start today.
Great. All right. I'm going to share the results of our first poll here just so everybody can see what everybody's thinking. So it looks like people are, the two biggest answers are no impact, or that the recovery is going to be the first half of 2021. So, and I'm going to go ahead and ask the second question as well. So you'll see that poll pop up while I go to our panelists here on some of the most creative ways that you've seen your clients adapt in this period. So Jonathan, why don't we start with you?
So creatively, I think, you know, we've seen a lot of clients have to adjust from field sales to Chris's point about digital sales, you know, so they can't knock on doors the way they could. So we're seeing things like virtual coffee, you know, where they'll send a Starbucks card to somebody inviting them to a Zoom meeting to have, quote, coffee with them in person, but it's no longer in person. Or the same thing for lunch or wine tastings. We've seen some bartender virtual mixing sessions where clients have invited clients to learn how to make a cocktail at home. So we're seeing a lot of the kind of traditional field sales strategies shift in the marketplace. For those that are back in offices, we've seen sort of the shared gift packs, if you will. If you're going to send something to an out office where they still have employees, you know, they're sending everything in sort of individual packaged items. It's not like the big buffet meals anymore that show up, right? It's the individual boxed lunches, so that they'll ship 20 box lunches as opposed to where they might have set up, you know, 50 pounds of fajita meat or something for somebody. And it's really important to also, like, you can productize those packages that you ship stuff in so that your brand sits there in their offices all the time. So big change in the way field sales are being done right now. And to Chris's point about really shifting things to digital markets, that's one area.
So it sounds like it's some of the same activities, just moving it digital as opposed to face-to-face.
Yeah.
Networking, bringing people together, reaching out, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is a lot of our clients have, you know, had to move away from traditional trade show environments, you know, where they were doing in-person connections. And, you know, the third point I was going to bring up, and Chris kind of made it for me as well, which is, you know, using digital automation technologies to really extend your outreach. So products like Cleverly, which accelerate and automate your Sales Navigator LinkedIn processes of connecting to people. Basically, this you know, Cleverly will just continue to send out a series of 4 escalating messages requesting your targets connect with you. And then once they connect with you, you can take over manually. So it's sort of like work in the room, only the room is virtual, and it's automated and it works in your sleep. So you don't have to be there until it connects. And then you take over the automation process manually. A competitor of theirs is called B2Beep. Both these products are super inexpensive and easy to use. And you can get help directly from the SaaS companies themselves, or you can reach out to a company like mine or Chris to really help you with the messaging strategies that are put together for those. So virtual, the automated networking technology tools are a big hit these days, and we've pretty much deployed them across the board for a lot of our clients.
Yeah, and for B2C clients, some of the online chat features that are relatively easy to plug into your website, that's also a great way. If you can't see customers face to face and they want to have a conversation, you don't have the staff to receive phone calls all the time, these online chat bots that you can install on your website are actually pretty smart, and they operate kind of like what Jonathan said. The first couple of interactions with the customer are automated, right? What can I help you with? Oh, let me find the right person for you. And then it pings somebody in your office to then take the customer when they need a real person. And again, especially for B2C businesses, that's the kind of thing that had been bubbling up and percolating along for a couple of years, but I would encourage any B2C business to look very closely at that.
Okay, interesting.
So I saw a question in the chat just now on Cleverly. Cleverly integrates with Sales Navigator in LinkedIn. So it's a product that directly plugs into your LinkedIn process.
Okay. Well, for some reason, I'm not seeing the questions in chat, but we'll keep going here. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and share the results of the second poll here. It looks like in terms of the challenges that everybody's experiencing is that the big challenges are related to customers, right? So customers are delaying purchase decisions and they're pushing out schedules, which of course is affecting the cash flow of our customers. So, Trudy, what are you seeing as the most creative things that your customers are doing during this period of time?
Yeah, part A, I have to jump on the digital bandwagon. So in banking, we had before the pandemic been encouraging clients to use all the digital capabilities that we have or any bank has. So it's been really important to have on your mobile phone the ability to bank. I mean, they can't come into work. So we've seen a lot more of the digital bank information systems. We've also seen a lot more clients. You can upload your financials, you can do anything digitally so that you don't have to go into a banking center. You still need to talk to people. I mean, commercial lending is still a people decision individual, but the digital is huge in banking too, because you needed it. You didn't need it before as much as you do now. Secondly, and I'll defer also after my comments to Nadine, two things. With clients, banks hunkered down first during the pandemic with their current clients. Where are you? How are you going to do it? And I think the deep dive into numbers from existing clients required a lot of time. They also, PPP was a big deal during the first quarter. So that was about all we could do, was make sure people were getting their PPP money when they needed it. Now it's, okay, this thing doesn't look like it's over, and it may go on for a long time. So our clients are getting really, really good. Before, they weren't so invested in projections and, worst case scenario, best case scenario, so much in terms of over communicating with the bank, so that, I mean, we do have clients that, the ones that are doing great, we're setting up lines of credit with accordion. So if you need it to go up, it's going to go up. That we're real happy with that. But the ones that are struggling, if they think they're going to not be able to make a covenant, we just want to get the real story. Give us the real story. Don't do rainbows. What do you think you're going to look at, so we can set a covenant you can meet, so we can keep moving forward? Because some of them are really impacted. The main thing, that 70%, most of our clients that are struggling right now, they have the contracts. They know the business is there. It's just nobody's putting their foot on the gas. So instead of the revenues coming second quarter or third quarter, we have one that the first revenue will start December, but it won't show till first quarter. So all of those loan covenants and loans that you have they're not in compliance. So you just have to work very closely, and they are doing that. And we're actually lending into defaulted covenant.
Okay.
The other is the mergers and acquisitions. And I think with Nadine, we are seeing a lot of our clients, remember, they're all privately held companies, family owned. When we're losing outstandings, which we hate to do, they're being bought. Lots of companies with cash are seeing great opportunity with clients who are a little bit overwhelmed or need money, and they're either buying them out totally or buying into them. And so, and some of them are becoming extremely wealthy. I'm very jealous, but that's a huge trend. If when we see a payoff, it's generally they've been approached by somebody with cash and they're selling out.
Okay. So a key takeaway from that is that it's always a good idea to tell your banker the truth, but now it's even more important, even if the truth is bad news, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Nadeem, you want to talk about some of the creative things that you're seeing your customers do?
Surely. I think, you know, the import of digital advertising should not be lost on us. I think, you know, this change in the ecosystem that we call, you know, business commerce today. I'm dealing with Amazon, Target, I mean, the major retailers and Amazon at a corporate level. The business shift to online business is humongous. I mean, you know, you're talking double digit type of swing from brick and mortar to, and that's going to stay for the long haul. Christmas fundamentally is going to come early. I mean, this mad dash last week of December is gone. So a lot of commerce is going to be conducted online, whether it be through Walmart or Target, but it will be online. And when Chris and Jonathan alluded to this, the import of digital, but digital advertising in particular is a very expensive exercise. When you buy keywords and the strategies and so on and so forth, it could be a big part of your SG&A in a company's P&L. So I think efficient purchasing of digital advertising is very important. I think the fact to recognize that Christmas may be coming in October and November, not in December, if we are a retailer. I think those are very, very important things to really plan on right now and have your infrastructure in place. One of the things that I'm looking at our customers is, you know, there's a mood of defense when you have that. I think, you know, Trudy, you talked about PPP. A lot of effort is being put into getting PPP loans. While that's an important, I will use the term, if you'll permit me, crutch. All that is basically getting you buy for something. To make fundamental focus of your company on getting a PP loan is a mistake. Because if you are fundamentally not sound in a fiscal sense and your business model has not changed, then no amount of fiscal stimulus is going to get you through. And that's something we have to recognize. So my part about changing the dynamic from how were you marketing before to a new way of marketing, to go and basically make sure that whatever your services are, whether goods or services or whatever it is that you're selling, has to be in front of the customer for a quick decision. And that's all about digital marketing today. And I think a lot of capital is required for just that aspect of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Rusty,
yes,
can I touch on something that you said? Yeah, you know, when you talk about digital advertising, a lot of companies sort of have a philosophy of set it and forget it. Unfortunately, they don't modify their pay-per-click programs. They don't run multivariate or A/B testing on them. And they haven't really thought about their keyword analysis and organic rankings or publishings as of late to take advantage of COVID situation environments. What people were searching for 6 months ago may not be what they were searching for, you know, this month or frankly last month. In this regard. So you do have to, in this world of COVID, one of the things that we're working with clients on is constantly monitoring and adjusting these programs. So to Nadeem's point, you don't waste a lot of money on them and that you're maximizing your conversion methodologies once they do click through to your landing pages. And by the way, if you aren't running landing pages for any of your programs, you need to give us a call because you're wasting a ton of money if you're just driving them to your websites. So Chris will gladly, I think, jump on that bandwagon. I'll pass the torch.
Yeah, there's an old joke that advertisers used to say, I know half my advertising works, I just don't know which half. But nowadays, you can really tell which of your advertising is working. So to build on what Jonathan was saying, don't be afraid to, you don't need to spend more on digital advertising. And this builds on Nadeem's point, you need to just spend more intelligently. And the way to spend more intelligently online is to do what Jonathan said, which is to don't just set your campaign up and walk away and brush your hands off and look at it in 6 months or 3 months. You got to look at it every week. And so Pierpont, you know, physician heal thyself, that's what we have done. During the COVID pandemic, we have actually increased our digital advertising spend because all of the normal ways that Pierpont connects with new customers and new clients is usually going to events, going to happy hours, taking people out to lunch, going to conferences. And that's just not available now. And so we recognize that early, and we have been really aggressive in increasing our spend, but also evaluating literally on a week-to-week basis, are we spending our money in the right places? And it's worked. We are, and Phil, you know, who was speaking earlier today, will say that we've been able to weather the storm pretty well this year so far. And it's because we've been smart and efficient and aggressive in our online advertising. And we advise our clients to do the same.
And what I'm hearing from all four of you is digital, digital, digital. If you're not online, whether it's for marketing, sales, finance, banking, whatever, you got to get there. This is kind of what I'm hearing here. So, we'd love to have some questions from the audience as well. I'm going to continue with my questions here, but if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panelists, please use the chat feature in Zoom, and please type your question into the chat feature. And I'm monitoring that. And so if you have any questions, I'd love to ask the panelists of that. And while we ask the next question, I'm going to go ahead and put up the third poll, and this is the last poll that we're going to be doing here, is what opportunities do you think have become available for your business as a result of the pandemic? One of the questions that I have is, how do you build and maintain business relationships with your customers, with your vendors and suppliers, with your partners, and so on and so forth virtually? See, we used to be able to go out and meet with people face to face and shake their hand and see their facility and so on and so forth. How do you maintain and build those relationships now that you can't actually physically go out and see folks? Jonathan, why don't we start with you?
Well, you know, at the start of the pandemic, one of the things was I reached back into my 3,000 contact database that I had, and I basically put out offers to them saying that we knew that they were going to be facing some challenges and that we were here to support and help them. And, you know, we threw out a free offer to them that said, basically, I'm happy to consult with you for free on anything that you might like to talk about right now. So I think, you know, having empathy in your communications is a big way to maintain those relationships with those customers.
So calling them not necessarily to sell, but just to check in on them, basically.
Right. You know, the best strategy in sales is give before you get, right? So whether it's, you know, tapping your center of influences and your networking communities out there. So, you know, and it's worked as well. You know, I reached out to some contacts that I had in the private equity market, and I said, I realize a lot of your firms don't have chief marketing officers, and we do business strategy. And I said, you know, I'm happy to sit down and talk with any of your individual, you know, any of the companies that you're holding right now, completely complimentary for free, and give them several hours of consulting in this process. And it's opened up doors for us. So I always think that right now, anything you can do to kind of give before you get is a huge strategy with your network and your database.
Trudy, you're raising your hand. So how do you guys keep in touch?
So for bankers who love to go out and tour facilities, it's all about, and it's been really hard. My relationship managers just, when is this going to be over? And I encouraged one of them, if you could get us a vaccine, we'd be really good. You could go back. But for what we focused on, clients versus prospects. So clients, we are literally saying, you know, you're working from home. They don't want to see you until our positivity rate in Houston's lower. So it is about calling, and not just calling with the product of the day. That's not, but really calling, how are you doing? What are you doing? Especially the credit clients, calling them every month. We monitor it every month, relationship clients, and every periodically targeted prospects, and then broad-based. And with the prospects, as Jonathan said, it's not about, hey, what a great time to change banks, because maybe it isn't. But here's a webcast we did about the impact of the election on banking and on finance. Or here is a Merrill Lynch research report on your industry with you specifically. So we're really trying to use the digital and reach out, as Jonathan said, offer up something. And a lot of it's just when life gets better, or when they're ready to talk and want to ask about banking, that they remember us. And they don't remember us as a product pusher, but they remember us as providing some kind of information available. And that's how we're doing it. I'm not saying that my relationship managers aren't going crazy wanting to get out and make calls, but we're doing what's best for them and what's best for the clients right now.
Chris, you have anything to add here? So you're kind of the digital marketing expert, and I just want to throw something out here. Is I've gotten tons of people contacting me on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, trying to sell to me on LinkedIn, which is really off-putting.
Yeah.
In any thoughts or comments about how to build relationships without coming across as that schmarmy salesperson?
Yeah, that turns me off as well. I decline more LinkedIn requests than I accept these days because they inevitably seem to only want something for themselves, right? So one of the things I try to do is I try to find mutual connections with people. And if I can say, hey, Kevin, I'm also connected with Blake. Do you mind if you connect with me? And by making it clear that you're not necessarily trying to get them as a customer, but you're just being a sincere look. We know the same person, and I think there's some common interests or common background or common industries or something like that. I think that's a much more sincere and honest and ultimately helpful way, rather than cold. What's the equivalent of cold calling, Rusty? Right? What you're describing is it would be as if my phone is ringing all the time, and it's just random people asking if we could go get coffee. And I wouldn't do that on the phone, and I don't do it on LinkedIn. So I think be sincere and be judicious and be smart about it. Find common connections that make sense, and be honest and sincere, and don't use a form like a form connection request. Like I see the ones on my LinkedIn feed, there's like 3 or 4 of them that all kind of look the same, and I just ignore. The other thing I would say is, so I have a couple of networking groups that I have been involved in for a number of years, and we've moved those online as well. We've decided we're not going to pull the plug on our networking groups just because we can't meet in person, even though we really enjoy each other's company and we like having coffee together and things like that. So we've continued to have our regular events in this format, and it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing.
Right. Okay. And Nadim, I'm going to come to you here in just a few minutes on the same thing, but I do want to show the results of our third question here. Is it looks like in terms of some of the opportunities that the most of you, 60% of you said that implementing new ways of marketing is one of the opportunities coming out of here. 40% say that restructuring the organization to become more efficient, and even some of you said getting into new geographic markets is an opportunity. So anyway, that's all of our polling questions for today. So Nadim, how are you suggesting to folks in terms of keeping in touch with customers, referral partners, or business partners, and so on and so forth during this period of time?
Rusty, I think any crisis requires change. And I think, as somebody who's trying to lead change, you have to lead from the front, so to speak. I'll give you a real example. A lot of my customers are brick and mortar establishments. I mean, they're the conventional businesses, if you will. And, their demise is my demise. That's how I look at it. And so I met with a lot of the boards that own these companies. And one in particular I went to and I said, this is time. And I saw this come because I'd just come back from China, and I saw what was happening. And I told them that, one of the fundamental things you have to do is to invest in the online ecosystem, change your business model, invest now. And the board listened to me, and yet there was not a decision made very quickly. So what I offered to them was, fine, give me this business channel. Let me put my money where my mouth is. And it was pretty extensive capital investment. So I basically opened my checkbook and I started a company. And this is 2.5 months ago, 3 months now. And 3 months into it, I think these guys are now wanting a share in my company. And I think sometimes you have to jar people into submission, so to speak, because bigger the company, decision-making process is slow. But I think in this situation, there's an opportunity always, right? And most of us are entrepreneurs. And I think if you can lead by example, and like somebody said, you have to give before you get. In some cases, you have to give more and show the way forward. And I'll tell you, this is exactly what's happened with me. And I think, all of us will benefit. My customer will benefit. I'll definitely benefit. And I think some real some significant way of making that change happen has to be done by leaders, in my opinion. I think saying is one thing and acting is something completely different. And I think, and there are a lot of examples, I'm sure, across the country, people are doing that. I saw something very similar in China. And I'll tell you, as much as politics aside, I think that's a country that basically started where it started. And now they are thriving. I talk to China every day, and these people are conducting more commerce than they ever had before, whether you like it or not. So I think there's something to be learned from that exercise. We have to adapt it to our environment. But I think inactivity is a killer. I think, sometimes people freeze and not make those changes, if you will, because, we all become defensive in a situation like that. So I think change and it's nothing is guaranteed that change will work. You have to accept failure sometimes to succeed. And I think that's the key thing here, is to basically not be idle, but to try different things till you can find that equilibrium that's right for you.
Yeah, I think that something you said was very important. I tell you what, I've given away a lot of free consulting and free coaching services this summer, and it's starting to pay off. People remember that. When you think about how you want people to remember how you behaved during this crisis, when you reach out and help people, they remember it. So we have a question from in the chat box from Jim Tom 40. And how much more important is personal brand, and how do you develop it?
So I'll take
Chris,
that.
you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, that was a great question. It's been an interesting development. In the last couple of months, we've had more and more of our clients, most of our clients are B2B clients. And we've had more of them come to us and say, we need help with our executives. Our executives are not, they're recognizing the value of the individuals within the company in terms of keeping the company afloat and making connections. And a lot of businesses are recognizing that their key executives aren't reflecting their best selves online. And that's where you have to get your personal brand buttoned up, is online, right? You can have your own personal brand when you're at a convention or at a happy hour or something like that, but a lot of people have neglected their online brand, and now a lot of our clients are recognizing that. And so I think you need to take a good hard look, start with your LinkedIn profile and start with your bio on your company's website, and make sure they're aligned, make sure that they're telling the same story. You almost have to go back to think about when you were first starting out in your career and you had to have your own elevator pitch about why somebody should hire you. It's kind of the same thing, even if you're an executive, right? People are hiring, they're not hiring you, they're hiring your company. And if you can have a good, succinct elevator pitch that on your LinkedIn page, that again is also the same as on your company profile page, that's important, because people are looking more to see, well, who is this guy? Who is this woman who's in charge of this company? And they go to your LinkedIn page all the time. And you'd be surprised how many senior executives have neglected their LinkedIn pages. They don't have an about section. Some of them don't even have a photograph. So start with your LinkedIn page and get that so it looks current, correct. It doesn't need to be 50 pages long, but have a good about section. Have your current job listing be current and correct. And think of what are the keywords that you want people to associate with you as an executive. Is it finance? Is it digital marketing? Is it IT? And make sure that those keywords are reflected in your job title and your about section, and just start there. And that's the best way to just sort of kickstart and rejuvenate your own personal brand.
Yeah, we've landed business through our LinkedIn profiles just by optimizing our keywords on our LinkedIn profiles and frequently updating the case studies or project samples that we put up. So anytime, if you've done a big project recently for one of your clients, you can showcase it on your LinkedIn, and there's essentially a portfolio section, if you will, a gallery section, if you will.
Yeah, I was on a webinar about 2 weeks ago about what kinds of jobs or what kind of skills and experience marketers are looking for when we're hiring. And I got a video copy of that talk, that webinar, and now it's featured prominently on my LinkedIn profile. And so that's an example of something that I did recently that I thought went really well. And now it's boom, front and center right on my LinkedIn profile.
So sharing content, and you don't necessarily even have to develop the content yourself. You're sharing content that someone else has developed.
Right.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple of other strategies you can use too for personal branding. One, you can obviously pay to join somebody like Forbes. They have a big networking publishing platform, and you can publish on that and get some high profile submission work. I think Chris can probably talk about that. And there's also just, general, you can track things like help a reporter out, and which is a really, essentially simple, inexpensive, free tool almost to just track what people are asking about in the news and the media, and you could submit responses to it. And we do that pretty frequently to raise our own personal profiles in the marketplace. So
the other way, and this is not a sales pitch for Pierpont, but a public relations agency like Pierpont can help you get quoted in a newspaper article, in the Houston Business Journal, in the Houston Chronicle, in Forbes, in those kinds of elite journals, and that helps your brand as well. And that's one of the things that people increasingly turning to us for. It's really hard now because the whole news cycle is just consumed with COVID and the election, and that's it. And so it's even harder to get because the news hole is so dominated by all these other stories, but that's where a good PR agency can help position you as a subject matter expert or a thought leader and get you in the right kinds of journals and the right kinds of articles.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give Chris a plug. I know he won't do it for himself, but we have a number of our clients whose executives have worked with Pierpont over the years, and they're very successful at raising their profiles in the marketplace.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Trudy, what are you and your team doing to increase your personal brand?
Well, I was just listening, and I'm thinking of it in two sections. Section one, our chairman, his personal brand, Brian Moynihan, and in our associate satisfaction surveys, there are a lot of questions and thoughtfulness around, well, does every associate feel that our chairman communicates consistently, represents who they are the values represented every step of the way? And do we reiterate those values? And are you required to live those values? So I think it's our brand a lot as a big company depends upon how a Brian Moynihan, how he reacts to some of the key issues of the day. Just like, if you work at Chase, you got Jamie Dimon. So you've got these names that you want to represent who you are and communicate with you. And then in our world, especially when you can't be out looking people eye to eye and shaking hands, can't touch, are you every day being transparent, being honest, being prepared, being consistent? And we're constantly asking our clients, what is it you want from what they consider a good banker, and are we doing that? And that's our associate set. But I think I called every week. I call about 60 clients per week, and it's, how are you doing? Are we doing everything? And trying to get a sense for how they're feeling about me as the market exec, about the relationship manager and the process, and just the bank in general. It's really interesting. It's good for me. Sometimes it's great to hear and I'm excited, sometimes not so great, and I have to work on it. But that personal brand, yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, is that people are going to remember you reaching out and checking on them, even when this is all over. We have another question from Kevin Reisner in here, and I think Nadine will let you start on this one, and then Trudy will let you follow up with it. Is, how have you seen valuations change in companies when requesting capital in the midst of a pivot from brick and mortar to virtual commerce, where collateral may no longer be an option? So how are you guys valuing companies these days when the collateral is not there?
Let me take it. I've been involved with investment bankers and valuations for a company that I have a major investment in, and I'll tell you, the fundamentals of valuations have not changed. I mean, if you talk to the conventional way of looking at business, DCF, people look in cash flow and all that, none of that has changed. What is happening right now in the market, I mean, what we call M&A deal flows, if you will. There's a lot of capital. There's no question what we call dry powder. But the deals that are happening are either distressed deals where people are basically trying to exit because they're in a distress mode, or there are premium deals because people have thrived in this environment and they want double-digit multiples on EBITDA on their valuation. So there are just two ends of the spectrum. The mid-market deals are not there because, if everything was normal, you would have those traditional, whatever X it is for your industry. So I think two things are happening. Number one, if you are a financial player and you're looking for money in the market, uh, credit is tight. The credit is not. I mean, Trudy will talk. A conventional bank, I don't know what the regulators are saying. I know asset-based lending is extremely tight. Traditional banks are looking at it in a very different way because they just don't know what the new environment is. And banks are about to write off what they put in workout. They're going to basically have to write off a lot of loans. I mean, that's a fact of life. And what a fourth quarter, fifth quarter begins. But there's a lot of money in family practice and family businesses where, people want to invest and get a lot for their returns for their money. And there are deals a plus. So the guidance I was talking about is that if you are a company, you want to be that premier deal so you can show that, even though you have shrunk in size, you still have EBITDA, you still have cash flow, or you will about to next month, and you're not trying to go back to your $100 million day. You will be a good fiscally disciplined company, cash positive, whether you are 40 million, 50 million, that's the universe you are in, and you grow to that point. And that's the key, in my opinion, how companies are being valued.
Yeah, one of our tab members, he says often in tab meetings, he says, I don't care whether you're a $500,000 company, you should make money. If you're a $5 million company, you should make money. If you're a $50 million company, you should make money, right? And so,
Dustin, permit me just one quick point, on branding. I'll tell you, one of the propensity for people to do, and this is in the consumer product company that I have investment in, is to go and beat up on price. That's the worst thing you can do. If you want to maintain your brand, and if it's worth X, you want to be at X. Do not cut your price. I think that's the worst thing people can do, is to basically diminish their value by cutting price. That's it.
Okay. Trudy, you were nodding on a lot of the stuff that Nadeem was saying.
Of course.
Any additions there?
Nadeem's got it. The first part of collateral is a lot of bankers require not only cash flow, but collateral value. We haven't seen a huge drop in the real estate appraisals and all of that we're doing. We hear it might be coming, but that's held very well in terms of real estate loans. The harder part is if you've got a line of credit based upon receivables and inventory, and the old traditional is receivables under 90 days, only 50% of inventory. Well, inventory is sitting a little bit longer because people aren't ordering, and receivables are going longer because people are taking longer to pay. So trying to do the right thing and give money to people without going outside the normal parameters of lending with receivables and inventory. And in terms on valuations, in the past, we've always told clients, funded debt to EBITDA is a magical banking ratio. It's the sexy banking ratio. And we've tried to convince clients without real estate, keep it under 3, with real estate, keep it under 4. And a lot of times it's when they're all excited, entrepreneurs are all excited, they go over that. What we're finding is clients that did that, they're doing pretty well. They're hanging in there. They may have to redo some things, but the cash flow's there. But the multiples of EBITDA, what we're seeing on medical practices, they're getting offers, and you don't know a phone offer is a real offer, but they're getting some offers that are unbelievable. We have a client that's in HVAC equipment, and he's about to become quite the wealthy man. So the deals are still out there for those that have had consistency. And I love what Nadeem says. It is okay if you went from 100 million to 60, as long as you've adjusted it and you realize here's where I am and here's where I'm going to be. Because there's nothing wrong with a $60 million company or a $9 million company, and even not-for-profits need to be profitable. So if you've adjusted to that, Nadeem's so right about that.
Okay. Rusty, can I add to something that Nadeem said about pricing? So we do thousands of voice of the customer interviews to measure brands in the marketplace. And part of that is giving them a benchmark of where they are on their pricing standards. How much money are they leaving on the table? Say, are they 80 cents on the dollar? Are they leaving 20%? And we can tell them whether they're raising, if they raise or lower the prices, what the likely or probability will be for clients to purchase more or purchase less. The vast majority of the time, lowering price does not increase a sale. Over and over again, we see historically. If you lower by 5%, you won't see a 5 or 7% lift, right? In the number of sales that are going on there. And many times it's because they haven't established that value point yet to the full dollar value that they need to be at in the first place to even raise pricing. So, if you're thinking about making a pricing change or repackaging or rebundling to meet a certain price, putting 5 things in the bundle for $100 versus 4 things in the bundle, or switching out your bundles, you can actually statistically and quantitatively measure that in the marketplace with your customers through these survey methods that we use.
Okay. I want to switch gears here real quick. We're running out of time, but I do want to touch on, we talked about how to maintain employee communications during this period. And I see that Cody just joined us. He's changed clothes, it looks like, from this morning. But one of the things that Cody said this morning was that they actually hired and onboarded a CFO, without, digitally. What are you guys seeing in terms of how to maintain, your culture, your communications with your employees, how you hire and interview people during this period of time? So, Chris, you want to start with that?
Yeah. I've had a lot of discussions about this, not just with people within Pierpont, but with my friends who work in different businesses. And what we have found is that if you have a successful in-person culture, it makes it a lot easier to transition to a successful virtual culture. But if you don't have a good, if your current corporate culture isn't healthy and strong and your communications aren't good, then you're going to have an even harder time maintaining your corporate culture virtually. That doesn't mean that it can't be done, but it's going to take a lot more effort. Now, we knew we had a good corporate culture within Pierpont. We're frequently listed as one of the best places to work in Houston, and that's because we look out for each other, we take care of each other, we like each other. But even so, knowing that we had a good baseline, we made a lot of efforts to make sure that we were over communicating with employees. For the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, we gave almost daily updates on how the business is going, some successes from within different teams, new clients we hired. We had virtual happy hours we still have the virtual happy hours, actually. We've now started asking leaders to have one-on-one lunches with their direct reports. And so even though we have a good baseline, we have not rested on our laurels, and we've tried to be creative to find ways to keep the morale and the connections and the positivity that we enjoy here. We want to make sure those continue.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
Rusty, I think, most of us have adapted to this virtual environment, but I think there's a significant amount of investment that needs to be made in human capital. And the reason I say that is not every employee is going to be cut out for a virtual environment. I mean, we're all different human beings. Productivity gets a little bit of a hit. Not every employee is cut out, self-discipline to do something like that. So our companies have to make a very focused effort in educating and investing in human capital so they are productive in this environment and really retooling them. Because there's fatigue. I mean, the Zoom thing is fine, but I was reading today, the president of Google came up and said that, there's humongous fatigue for employees who are basically focused on a screen. So how do you basically fix that? So we have to really learn a lot about the work environment virtually. And I think it will be a hybrid model, but I think there's got to be focus and investment in employees to make them more productive and more suited for this type of a world. I think that's very important, and that should be an investment.
Great. All right. We've got about 5 minutes left, and so I want to give everybody kind of a final, any final words of wisdom for any of the from any of you. So, Trudy, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, just to reiterate, embrace digital, embrace it for your treasury relationship, for your credit relationship. And so number one. And number two, again, over communicate with whomever your bank and banker is. Don't just be totally open, because all banks are in the same situation. I mean, the Federal Reserve requires you to risk rate clients, and if yours is not going to be as good as it was a quarter ago, it is what it is. But if you over communicate, you have to over communicate and just work together. Think about cash flow, think about EBITDA trends. And as Nadeem says, it is okay if your company shrunk, but just make sure you've got your expenses under control and you have a plan for dealing with your company this size for some period of time. I love entrepreneurs. I'm the boring banker, that nerdy that loves numbers, but these entrepreneurs, I am so impressed with how something horrible happens and they think, well, this is good, now I can go do this. So keep your spirit, keep the entrepreneurial spirit, because I'm seeing clients think of things that, of course, I'd go, oh, I don't know, and it's doing great. So don't lose the entrepreneurial spirit that got you where you were.
Great advice, Trudy. And I'm hearing that bankers are people too, and they understand what's going on, right? All right, Chris, any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, if you're waiting for things to get back to normal to start being aggressive again, it's too late. If you're waiting for for the economy to recover and for a vaccine to arrive to then start investing in hiring new people or in marketing or in building a new website or acquiring new customers, it's too late. You should start doing that now. There's an old saw that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time is tomorrow. So plant your tree tomorrow.
Okay. All right, Nadeem, any final words of wisdom?
I think, in this type of an environment, mental agility is number one. I think, we have to change our mental framework and think of this as an opportunity and take a very positive approach to this rather than what us as human beings usually do in a situation like that. It's difficult, but I think we need to look at this as an opportunity and nothing else.
Okay. I want to go back to you for a minute, Chris. I was really disappointed today that you didn't talk about your turtle analogy today.
Oh, I'll say that real quick. So some of our clients, when the pandemic started, did what I call turtling. They just sort of withdrew into their shell and they didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to market. They cut, they ended our contract with them. And I understand it was a very scary and frustrating and uncertain time. But some of our other clients have done the opposite. So we have a travel technology company. You would think a travel company, oh my God, they're probably just bleeding money. And they've had some struggles over the last 6 months, but they have reinvested in their own online marketing and reinvested in Pierpont, and actually our monthly retainer with them has gone up in the last couple of months because they're being aggressive, right? They're doing what I said. They're not waiting for things to get back to normal. They're getting themselves in a position so that when things do go back to normal, they're already up and running.
Okay, so don't turtle. I've never used turtle as a verb before, but all right, Jonathan, any final words of wisdom?
Sure. I would go back to saying less is more. You need to really trim your messaging, trim your service and product offerings, and be very tight. Think about your sales scripts and your elevator pitches. We use a framework for that. Set up the painter challenge first with one sentence, ask a question, use a situational understanding statement with empathy as your second. Third statement is your ROI or your promise. Your fourth statement is your proof point, how you can help. And your fifth statement is your call to action. Literally, if you're putting an email together, a veto letter, a promotion, whatever it might be, think about really, really concise frameworks. People do not have any time for distractions and noise these days. So tighten the brand up as best you can.
All right. Well, our time is up for today. We're supposed to be finishing here at 11:05, and I've got 11:04. Bob did put a link in the chat box to go back to the main session so you can pick your next session. I believe that there is a 10-minute break here until 11:15, and so the next set of breakout sessions will start at 11:15. And so you can make your way back to the main session by clicking on that link in the chat box. I want to thank Trudy and Chris and Nadeem and Jonathan for your time today. I really appreciate it. Good discussion here. And then for all of you that are guests today, the contact information for all of the sponsors, particularly the ones that are on the panel today, will be made available to you after the event. So feel free to reach out. I'm going to reach out to Jonathan and get this 5-point thing there because I wasn't able to write it down quickly enough. But I want to thank everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session. So get back to your next breakout session in 10 minutes at 11:15.
Thanks, Rusty. Nice job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.